As a middle-aged single man, my dating experiences could fill a book. Over the past 5 years, I've been on roughly 100 dates, yet I've never found the right person. Every woman I've met has felt my conditions weren't good enough. I don't have a car, a house, or savings. My parents are also in poor health and haven't yet received their retirement benefits to support themselves. And today was my first date. As soon as she sat down, she asked, "Can you do laundry, cook, and take care of children?" I was taken aback and wondered if I had heard correctly. I took a closer look at the woman in front of me. She was quite tall, about 5'7". She was 5 years younger than me, very attractive, and had a great demeanor, giving off an effortlessly stylish vibe. Though I'm not very familiar with brands, I could tell her clothes and bag were quite expensive. This woman, who seemed like a good match, asked me if I could do laundry, cook, and take care of children as her first question. I paused for a moment without saying anything, and she smiled, her clear eyes fixed on me. "Gabriel, let me introduce myself. My name is Isabella. I'm 30 years old and have a 2-year-old son named Noah, who shares my last name. I work as a mid-level manager at a company, and my job is quite busy. I'm looking for a man who can take care of the family." Isabella continued, "I came here to find a partner who can take responsibility for caring for my son and the family. I will give you 10,000 yuan a month for living expenses, and I will cover all the costs for the child's education. If we get married, Gabriel, can you accept being a house husband?" This was the first time I had ever heard such a unique request. Last week, my company laid off employees, and at 35 years old, I was just an ordinary employee, so I was unfortunately laid off. Actually, I was pretty worried before the blind date. After all, I don't have a car, a house, or savings, and now I'm unemployed. Others must think I'm even less attractive. I never expected this blind date to be so unique. Gabriel, what do you think? Isabella took a sip of coffee and asked me slowly. I hesitated and said, "I don't know if the matchmaker told you about my situation. I'm not young anymore. I don't have a car or a house. My savings aren't much, and my family background is average. Would you mind?" Isabella unexpectedly smiled. "I have a car, a house, and savings. I can also pay your parents' monthly support. What else is there to worry about?" I stared at her in disbelief, feeling like I was dreaming. I pinched myself hard, wincing at the pain. This was too good to be true. It was like a blessing from heaven, falling right into my lap. I tried to calm myself down and nodded, saying, "I'm willing. I've been doing housework at home since I was a child, and I'm pretty good at organizing things. I've also taken care of my relatives' children before and can cook, though I'm worried you might not like it." Isabella smiled and asked, "Do you know if Gabriel is free today?" I answered directly, "Yes, I'm free. I've been laid off, so of course I'm free." Isabella took some money out of her wallet, placed it under the coffee cup and said, "Then I'll take the day off too. Let's go to the market together to buy groceries, and you can cook when we get back." I quickly stood up and followed her. Deep down, I was still hesitant. Isabella was so well off. Even if she was looking for a house husband, there must be plenty of younger, more attractive men who would jump at the chance. I just couldn't figure out why she had chosen me. Maybe it was because of all the failed matchmaking experiences over the years that had left me with little confidence in myself. I had already prepared myself mentally to spend the rest of my life alone. If I couldn't find a partner, I'd just wait until my parents passed away, and then move into a nursing home. Life had already hit rock bottom, so there wasn't much to worry about anymore. I sneakily glanced at Isabella beside me and felt a bit embarrassed, as she seemed as pure and refreshing as a breeze or the moonlight. Maybe I should give it another try. Once I arrived at the vegetable market, I immediately put my self-doubt aside. I may not be great at other things, but shopping for groceries and cooking are areas where I truly excel. When I was young, my parents were both working, so my grandparents took care of me. As a result, I started helping with household chores at a very young age. By the time I was 6 or 7, I could already stand on a small stool and mimic the adults as I cooked. As I looked at the fruits and vegetables at the stall, I asked Isabella, "Isabella, is there anything you don't like to eat?" Isabella replied, "I don't eat spicy food, but everything else is fine." I smiled and said, "Great, I don't eat spicy food either. It's hot today, so we can buy some loofah and pork ribs to make soup." stir-fry a few light vegetarian dishes to go with the rice, and make some easy-to-digest scrambled eggs for the kids. Isabella didn't object. Sure, that's fine. You can choose the ingredients yourself. I walked up to a stall and began selecting the tenderest loofah and Chinese broccoli with familiarity. Then I went to buy tofu and pork ribs. With my hands full of vegetables, I turned to ask Isabella, "Do you have any eggs at home?" Isabella cleared her throat and said, "I don't know how to cook. The fridge at home only has beer and yogurt." I couldn't help but laugh. "Then I'll go buy a box of eggs." After buying the groceries, Isabella drove me back to her neighborhood. From what I had seen of Isabella's attire, I assumed she must earn a good income, and the car she drove was a SUV worth over 300,000 yuan. When we arrived at her place, I learned that the house she had purchased was part of a highly sought-after development in the city a few years ago, with an initial price of 18,000 yuan per square meter. Isabella's house was 120 square meters, with 3 bedrooms and 2 living rooms, spacious and tastefully decorated. I put down my things and looked around. "Where's your son?" "He's at the daycare center in the neighborhood. You go ahead and cook. I'll handle some work and pick him up in half an hour." After saying that, Isabella took me to the kitchen, gave me a quick overview of how to use the various kitchen utensils, and then went back to her study to get busy. I looked around the brand new kitchen and felt a bit amused and exasperated at the same time, noticing that many of the kitchen utensils were covered in dust. It seemed like she hadn't used them since moving in. I wanted to make a good impression on Isabella, so I prepared the ingredients with great care. First, I blanched the pork ribs, cut them into small pieces, added ginger slices and cooking wine, and simmered them for 20 minutes. Then I added the sliced zucchini and continued cooking. I pan-fried the tofu until lightly golden on both sides, added seasonings, and simmered until flavorful, then garnished with sesame seeds. I washed the Chinese broccoli, blanched it, then stir-fried garlic cloves and ginger slices in oil, added some soy sauce, and quickly stir-fried the Chinese broccoli for a few minutes before serving. Finally, I made a soft-boiled egg for the little one, adding some cornstarch for a smoother texture. After finishing everything, I served the dishes and soup on the table, and the rice was just ready. As the door opened, I looked up and saw Isabella walking in with a little boy. The little boy was exceptionally cute, with fair skin and big, bright eyes, resembling Isabella but with an extra touch of innocence and charm. "Wow, it smells so good." The little boy looked excitedly at the dishes on the table. Isabella patted his shoulder and said, "Go wash your hands." I hurried over, squatted down and smiled at the little boy, saying, "Hello, Noah. Uncle will take you to wash your hands. Okay?" To make the little guy feel more comfortable with me, I deliberately called him by his nickname. The little boy stared at me, blinking his eyes, completely unafraid, and instead said softly, "Okay." So I picked him up and took him to wash his hands. At the dinner table, Isabella focused on eating, while I ate and kept an eye on Noah's eating habits, even helping him with his food. The little guy was very obedient, holding his spoon and eating happily, one bite at a time. "It tastes good. I guess you didn't lie to me. You must have put a lot of effort into this." Isabella was clearly satisfied with the meal. Just as we finished eating, she had cleaned her plate. I had already taken Noah to wash his hands and was peeling an orange for him to eat. "As long as you like it, you can tell me what you and Noah want to eat in the future." Isabella smiled and said, "Let's go." I was a bit taken aback. "Where are we going?" Isabella smiled and replied, "To get our marriage certificate." I felt a bit dazed until I held the marriage certificate in my hands. "Me? I'm getting married?" I looked at Isabella beside me and Noah in her arms, feeling a bit confused. Just a few days ago, I was still a single middle-aged man, feeling like finding love was a distant dream, and I thought I'd spend the rest of my life alone. Now I'm married and have a child. Although Noah isn't my biological son, I swear I'll treat him as my own. "Gabriel, now that we've gotten married, let's find a time to invite your parents over for a meal." I nodded, feeling that this was only natural. Getting married happened so quickly, and suddenly I had a wife, which felt a bit unfamiliar. "What about your parents? When are they available?" "I'll let my parents know once we've set a date." To my surprise, Isabella said, "My parents passed away 2 years ago." I didn't know what to say at first. When I finally reacted, I whispered, "I'm sorry, I didn't know." Isabella was surprisingly calm and comforted me, saying, "It's okay. They were already in their 40s when they had me, so it was like they had a late-in-life daughter. They passed away peacefully." I remained silent for a moment, then changed the subject and started talking to her about Noah. "Now that we're married, should we tell Noah's biological father?" Isabella shook her head and said, "When I was with my ex-boyfriend, we agreed that after I gave birth to Noah, we would get married, and he would quit his job to be a stay-at-home dad. But he backed out in the end. So I broke up with him without hesitation. I don't want his child support either. I can raise the child on my own. I just hope he doesn't come after the child in the future." I didn't say anything else and just rubbed my nose. Back home, Isabella continued with her work, and I called my parents. "Mom, I got married." "Really?" "I'm not joking. I just got the marriage certificate today. He's a good person, and he has a child. I know you're worried, but I'll take care of him like my own child. Don't worry. Are you free this weekend? My wife wants to invite you over for dinner." After I got married, my mom didn't believe me at first and kept asking if I was joking. To reassure her, I sent her a copy of the marriage certificate, and she finally believed me. On the phone, my mom's voice choked up as she spoke. "Son, you've finally gotten married. Mom can finally rest easy. If the other family doesn't care about whether you have a house or a car, we must treat the bride well. Understand? Don't ever let her down." I swore I would treat my wife well and made plans with my mom to meet her, then hung up the phone. I didn't tell my parents that Isabella's conditions were much better than mine. I thought I'd tell them slowly after everyone met. Otherwise, I thought they might think I was deceived. On the day of the meeting, Isabella had already ordered the food, but Noah suddenly said he had a stomachache. I was about to carry Noah to the restroom, but Isabella said she could take him. "You stay here and wait for your parents. If they come and you're not here, they won't know me." I nodded and sat down. My parents hadn't arrived yet, but I ran into a girl I had gone on a blind date with before. She was 5 feet 3 inches, weighed about 180 pounds, and was older than me. However, she thought I didn't earn much and my conditions weren't good, so she didn't think much of me back then. "Gabriel, long time no see. You've gotten so handsome." She suddenly leaned in close, looked at me closely, and even touched my arm. I quickly stepped back. After getting married to Isabella, she replaced all my clothes with ones she liked. So now all the clothes I wear when I go out are chosen by her. Everyone says that appearance matters, and after dressing properly, I actually got a few more glances. "You haven't found a wife yet, have you? After you, I dated a few others, but none of them were as good as you. Why don't we just be together?" the woman said, leaning toward me. I felt helpless inside. No, I'm already married." She clearly didn't believe me. During the struggle, I heard my parents' voices. "Son, is this the woman you're going to marry?" I turned around and saw my parents standing at the door of the private room, looking shocked. Worse still, Isabella was holding Noah behind them, glaring at us. I was so scared that I pushed the woman away. No, you've misunderstood. She's my ex-date. My wife is Isabella." The woman tried to say something, but Isabella placed Noah in the children's chair and stared straight at her. Isabella had always been confident, and the woman shrunk back slightly upon seeing her, her tone softening. "Really? Are you two really married?" Isabella's lips curled into a smile, but her eyes remained cold. "Gabriel isn't blind. I'm here. Why would he choose you?" It wouldn't have mattered if she hadn't said anything, but once she did, everyone's attention shifted to them. In terms of appearance and attire, Isabella was clearly more impressive than the other woman. The woman felt humiliated and left in disgrace. I sighed in relief and told my parents to sit down. "Mom and Dad, come sit down. This is my fiancé, Isabella. The boy next to her is her son, Noah. Noah has a great personality." He smiled and greeted my parents, saying, "Hello, Grandpa and Grandma." My parents immediately smiled broadly and grew fonder of Noah the more they looked at him. Good, his name is Noah, right? How cute." After saying that, she handed Noah a red envelope, her face beaming with affection. Noah didn't reach out immediately but turned to look at Isabella. After seeing her nod, he happily took it. He also gave my parents a sweet smile and said, Thank you, Grandpa and Grandma. At the dinner table, Isabella kept chatting with my parents and didn't seem impatient at all. When she went to the bathroom, my mom pulled me aside and said, "Son, this girl seems like a good match. Since you're married, just live a good life. Mom only hopes you have someone who understands and cares about you by your side." I felt a bit embarrassed and said, "Mom, I was unemployed before, and after we got married, Isabella works outside the home to earn money while I stay home to take care of the kids. Would you mind? After all, my parents live in a small county, and their views are a bit conservative." I was worried they might not be able to accept it. To my surprise, my mom glared at me and said, "What? Taking care of the family isn't work. Since your wife is capable, you should focus on taking care of the family and Noah. A couple should work together for a good life." I was deeply moved and agreed wholeheartedly. Even my usually quiet father spoke seriously to me. "Son, our family isn't as well off as others. Your parents couldn't afford to buy you a car or a house, which is why you got married so late. No matter what, once you're married, you must make it work. She chose you because she values you as a person, not your external circumstances." Hearing this, I felt a pang of sadness, because I had been single all this time and had failed in many arranged marriages. Others always subtly implied that our family wasn't well off. I could endure this, but my parents were always unhappy, sighing in private, feeling they had burdened me. In truth, I never blamed them. I just felt I wasn't capable enough to be respected by others. I feel like I'm not very smart, my academic performance was average, and I only managed to graduate from a vocational college. After working for many years, my life hasn't improved much. I often face various hardships, earning only 3,000 yuan a month. After deducting rent, utilities, and food expenses, there's hardly any money left. I've tried many part-time jobs, driving for Didi, delivering food, even working on construction sites, but the money I saved was all spent on my parents' medical bills. At that time, lying in my small, old rental bed, I felt lost and even considered ending my life. Ultimately, a call for overtime pulled me back to reality. If I were to disappear, it wouldn't matter, but my parents wouldn't accept that outcome. For them, it's been so hard. Dying is easy, but living is the real challenge. Fortunately, I'm still alive and I met Isabella. After that meal, my parents finally felt at ease. To them, Isabella is well qualified and kind to both me and them. Noah is young, cute, and well behaved, and he's very close to me. As a middle-aged single man, I feel incredibly lucky to have married such a wonderful wife and have such a cute son. Usually, Isabella goes to work, and I take Noah to daycare. When it's time, I pick him up, go grocery shopping, cook dinner, and clean the house. My personality is fairly mild, and I'm honest and hardworking at work, always focusing on my tasks without seeking recognition. So I often end up at a disadvantage and haven't been promoted. However, handling household chores and taking care of the children comes naturally to me, and I never find it burdensome. As long as you set aside preconceptions, who says men can't take good care of a family? Seeing me so happy, Isabella looks very pleased. That's great. Now, whenever I come home, I can eat dinner, drink soup, and Noah is being taken care of, and the house is spotless. After finishing her meal, Isabella lay comfortably on the sofa, feeling deeply moved. I washed the dishes, brought a plate of sliced fruit, and placed it on the coffee table. I used a toothpick to pick up a piece of fruit and held it to her lips. Isabella took a bite and exclaimed, "Now I finally understand what it's like for men who marry such a capable wife." I couldn't help but laugh and cry at the same time. I fed Isabella a few more pieces of fruit, and then she suddenly asked me, "Gabriel, can you accompany me to a banquet tomorrow night?" I was a bit curious. "A banquet?" Isabella nodded and said, "Everyone attending are my colleagues from work, and we can bring our significant others." I thought about it and replied, "I don't mind, but I'm a bit worried you'll feel uncomfortable. After all, I'm just a house husband with no special skills." Isabella confidently lifted her chin and said, "Don't worry. If anyone says anything behind your back, I'll make them pay for it." She made me laugh out loud. However, on the day of the event, I tried on several outfits and felt genuinely nervous because I didn't want to embarrass Isabella. Isabella walked in, gave me a quick once-over, and I nervously asked, Does this look okay? I was wearing a white casual suit that Isabella had bought for me. I rarely wore suits and always felt like I didn't look good in them. Isabella smiled and picked out an emerald green gemstone brooch for me, pinning it on my suit. She said, "This suits you perfectly. You look like an elegant gentleman." I blushed and said, "No, I'm just an ordinary person." Isabella looked at me seriously and said, "Actually, your skin is very fair, you have a good aura, and your features are quite nice. I really like you." I couldn't say anything else, and my ears turned red. Because my family wasn't well off, I had never dated anyone before. Isabella was the only woman I had ever been close to. Isabella raised her eyebrows and said, "Are you blushing? How cute." The words on her lips faded away. We shared a long, tender kiss. After the kiss, I felt a bit out of breath, my heart racing. Isabella was a bit shorter than me, and she leaned into my arms, breathing softly, her warm breath brushing against my face. I heard her beautiful laughter. "Gabriel, is this your first kiss?" My face turned red, and I stood there speechless for a moment. Isabella had only meant it as a joke, but seeing me hold back, she was genuinely surprised. "Is this really your first kiss?" I blushed and nodded. Isabella laughed happily and said, "Then I'm a lucky person." At the banquet, Isabella chatted with her colleagues, while I stood by quietly accompanying her. Most of the people here were employees of large companies, looking very confident, and the topics they discussed sounded unfamiliar to me. International markets and fund trends were like a foreign language to me. Isabella communicated with them very well and chatted enthusiastically. I could only smile and watch silently. Isabella noticed I was a bit nervous and said kindly, "There's a buffet over there. If you're bored, you can go eat something. I'll come find you later." I nodded, said goodbye to everyone, and walked over. Usually, when I interacted with Isabella, she was very straightforward and easygoing. I hadn't seen her like this at work before. Today, listening to her talk with her colleagues about current events and projects, her logic was clear and her insights unique. It was fascinating to watch. I couldn't help but feel lucky to be married to such a charming woman. It was like a dream. I was casually eating some pastries, my attention on Isabella, when someone called my name. "Gabriel, is that you?" I was a little surprised to find someone I knew here. I looked up and felt that this person looked familiar, like someone I had seen before at work. "Don't you remember me? I'm Daniel. We used to work at the same company, but in different departments." The other person was quite friendly and came over to chat with me non-stop. I suddenly remembered that this person was my former colleague. Although we hadn't interacted much before, why was he being so friendly to me now? "I heard you were laid off. Where are you working now?" Daniel smiled at me and said, "You're dressed much better than before. You must have found a high-paying job." I shook my head and said, "I don't have a job right now." Daniel was a bit surprised. "No job? I thought you came here today to apply for a job at this company." I smiled wryly and said, "You're flattering me. This is a big company." Daniel paused for a moment and then asked, "Everyone here today is either an employee or a family member of an employee. Are you married?" I nodded. Daniel patted me on the shoulder and said happily, "That's great. You're finally not single anymore. You should live a good life from now on." I furrowed my brows slightly, but Daniel didn't notice. He continued, "My wife has been working at this company for several years. The salary and benefits are great. Unfortunately, I can't get in. Otherwise, I would have switched jobs long ago." This guy was too casual and talkative. I couldn't take it anymore and was about to find an excuse to leave when he suddenly asked, "Is that your wife?" I looked up and saw a stranger walking toward us. I shook my head and said no. Daniel thought I was embarrassed and said, "Are you afraid I'll say you married someone like her?" "It's okay. These days it's good to be married." When the woman approached, Daniel shouted, "You must be Gabriel's wife, right?" I was startled by his voice and hurriedly said, "Don't say that." The woman looked at him confusedly and replied, "No, Gabriel's wife is our director." Daniel froze. "What? The director?" The woman didn't respond to him but turned to me with a smile and said, "Gabriel, Isabella asked me to come find you. She wants to introduce you to her friend." I smiled and said, "All right, thank you." After saying that, I lifted my leg and walked away, leaving Daniel stunned behind. When I reached Isabella, she waved at me and said, "Gabriel, come over here. This is my friend Sophia and her husband Benjamin." The couple smiled happily at me. The woman was tall and looked energetic, while the man was gentle and scholarly. I thought they were both very nice at first glance. Sophia smiled and said, "I've heard that Isabella found an excellent husband who is good at cooking and housework. I'm finally meeting him in person today." I felt a bit flattered and blushed. Oh no, these are just small things. In reality, most people's definition of a good man probably has little to do with being a good housewife. Sophia, however, said, "How can you call that small things? For someone like me and Isabella, who doesn't do much housework and doesn't know much about life, finding a man willing to return to family life is truly rare." She wrapped her arm around Benjamin's and said, "Gabriel, please teach Benjamin some of your experience. I also want to enjoy life like Isabella does." Benjamin smiled and said, "Gabriel, please give me some guidance." Hearing the couple exchange these words, I felt my face grow red. Isabella and Sophia were discussing company matters, while Benjamin chatted casually with me. I looked at him curiously and asked, "Are you also a house husband like me?" Benjamin smiled and answered kindly, "I used to work for a foreign company, but it closed down, so I stayed home to take care of Sophia. However, I still have a lot to learn when it comes to cooking and housework. I rarely meet male friends like me, so I was excited to share some simple recipes and organizing tips with him." Benjamin listened attentively, his expression focused. "Oh, I see. I never noticed those things before." After the banquet, Isabella drove the car, and I sat beside her waiting for the red light. She smiled at me and asked, "How was the banquet today?" "It was great. I even met 2 of your friends." I didn't expect Benjamin to be a stay-at-home dad like me. Isabella looked at me with a gentle expression and said, "I was worried you'd get bored staying home alone, so I wanted you to make friends with Benjamin. After all, I've known Sophia for over a decade. We're both classmates and colleagues, so I trust her judgment." I didn't expect Isabella to think so deeply about it, and it warmed my heart. After returning home, I ran a bath for Isabella. Since I had attended the banquet tonight, I dropped Noah off at my parents' house. After all, they really love children, so it's nice for Noah to spend time with them. "Isabella." I heard Isabella calling me from the bathroom and thought she might have forgotten something, so I went over to ask, "What's wrong? Did you forget your clothes?" The bathroom was filled with steam, and Isabella was leaning over the edge of the bathtub, her eyes looking a bit dazed. My heart skipped a beat. Isabella gave me a lazy smile and waved at me, saying, "Gabriel, I can't reach my back. Could you help me?" "Sure." I felt drawn to her and quietly walked over, picking up the washcloth to scrub her back. My heart was racing, and my hands were trembling. Technically, we were already married, so helping my wife wash her back was a natural thing to do, but I still felt uneasy inside. After finishing washing Isabella's back, I was drenched in sweat. Isabella couldn't help but laugh at the sight, and her laughter made me feel flustered. "What's wrong?" She finally managed to stop laughing, reached out, and pinched my nose, saying, "Gabriel, you're so innocent." I opened my mouth but couldn't speak. Isabella tilted her head, smiling happily. "Why don't we get in the bath together?" I didn't know how I managed to get out of the bathroom. I felt dazed, as if I were walking on clouds. It wasn't until I lay in bed at night and saw Isabella sleeping peacefully beside me that I felt it was real. Now I'm no longer that middle-aged man who couldn't find a partner. I have a wife and a child, and a warm home. That simple rental apartment that had accompanied me for so many years felt like a distant dream. I quietly watched Isabella. She didn't look as sharp as she did during the day. She seemed softer and more gentle. I couldn't help but think that maybe I had done good deeds in my previous life, which is why I had met such a wonderful woman in this one. She was beautiful and capable, with a straightforward personality. She respected me, understood me, and had given me a stable and comfortable life. She helped me transform from a self-conscious person into someone more open and confident. She told me, "You have so many good qualities. You have a kind heart, you're gentle, and you never lose your temper with women or children." It was her encouragement that made me realize, you don't need to feel inferior. What others think doesn't matter to me. In my eyes, you are someone worth spending the rest of my life with. Thinking back on these words, My eyes welled up with tears. I lowered my head and gently kissed her forehead. The sleeping Isabella let out a soft sound, but wasn't woken up. Instead, she snuggled closer to me, resting her head on my chest. I wrapped my arms around her and closed my eyes with a smile. Before I knew it, Noah was old enough to start kindergarten. Isabella was rushing to work, so I took Noah to kindergarten. Since he had previously attended daycare, he adapted well. At the kindergarten gate, there was a group of children crying and fussing, but he was the only one laughing happily. I knelt down to tie Noah's shoelaces and gently told him, "Today is your first day at kindergarten. Remember to listen to the teacher. Okay. I'll pick you up after school." Noah nodded like a little adult. "I know, Dad." "Go back quickly." As I watched Noah walk inside with his backpack, I turned to leave but accidentally bumped into another parent who was also there to pick up their child. "I'm sorry, are you okay?" "I'm fine. Are you also a parent?" The man was around my age, quite handsome, with a little girl in a princess dress clinging to his legs and crying uncontrollably. "Yes, my child just started kindergarten." I noticed the little girl clearly didn't want to go to kindergarten and was crying hysterically. The man looked very frustrated. He tried to comfort her for a long time, but it didn't work. Finally, a kindergarten teacher came over with a lollipop, coaxing and persuading the little girl before taking her away. When I went to pick up Noah after school in the afternoon, I happened to run into that man again. We chatted for a few minutes, and then I saw Noah running toward me. "Daddy, you came to pick me up." I picked up Noah, who had run into my arms, kissed his round face, and asked, "Noah, how was kindergarten today? Were you a good boy?" Noah proudly straightened his little body and said, "Of course I was good." The teacher even praised me. After picking up Noah, I said goodbye to the man, only to notice he was staring blankly at Noah. I asked curiously, "What's wrong?" The man snapped out of it and smiled, saying, "Nothing. I just think your son is very likable." Noah, hearing the compliment, politely said, "Thank you, uncle." I smiled at the man and then left with Noah in my arms. In the evening, Isabella came home, and I massaged her shoulders and neck while chatting with her. "How was Noah at kindergarten today?" "He was well behaved and didn't cry." As I spoke, I thought about the man and casually mentioned it to Isabella. Isabella furrowed her brows and asked, "Do you know his name?" I shook my head and said, "I don't know either. I didn't ask him. I only know he's a parent who dropped off a little girl at kindergarten, probably the same age as Noah." At that point, I suddenly had a thought. Could that man be Noah's biological father? The next time I saw the man, I deliberately struck up a conversation with him. A man introduced himself as Christopher, a manager at a bank. Coincidentally, his daughter was in the same class as my Noah. I told Isabella about this, and she muttered, "I never expected such a coincidence." I noticed she was a bit upset, so I cautiously asked, "Is he Noah's biological father?" Isabella didn't intend to hide it and nodded directly. "Yes, I didn't expect his daughter to be around the same age as Noah, which means my initial feeling was correct. Not only was he looking for someone else, but he also had a child." I felt sorry for Isabella. He really didn't know how to appreciate what he had, especially with such a good girlfriend. Isabella suddenly smiled, reached out to pinch my cheek, and said, "Good thing I dumped him, otherwise, how would I have met you?" As she spoke, she leaned in and hugged my waist, kissing me. Before we could kiss twice, we heard Noah calling, "Daddy and Mommy, what are you doing?" My face turned red as I pulled away from Isabella, cleared my throat, and said, "Noah, why aren't you watching cartoons?" Noah chuckled, "I finished watching. What were Daddy and Mommy doing just now?" I blushed even more when Noah asked that, but Isabella answered naturally, "Dad and Mom were kissing to express their love." I stared at her in disbelief. Wait a minute, is it really okay to say that so directly in front of a child? Noah heard that and immediately said excitedly, "I want to kiss Dad and Mom too. I love Dad and Mom." I had no choice but to pick Noah up and let him kiss both my face and Isabella's face to his heart's content. That day, Isabella got off work early, so we went to pick up Noah together. At the kindergarten gate, we happened to run into Christopher. Seeing Isabella, Christopher's eyes lit up, and he walked over to greet her. "Isabella, it's been a long time. Have you gotten married?" Isabella glanced at him and replied coldly, It's none of your business. Christopher was rebuffed and turned his gaze toward me. I didn't expect you to be with Isabella. When I saw that little boy, he looked familiar, and I guessed he was related to Isabella, because Isabella was there. I just smiled politely at Christopher and didn't say much. Christopher looked me up and down and said, I didn't expect Isabella's tastes to change so much after you broke up. I felt a bit uneasy and was thinking of how to respond. But Isabella had already countered him. Of course things change. After experiencing something bad, would you want to make the same mistake again? Christopher's expression changed. Isabella, what do you mean by that? I can't quit my job to take care of you, but I wasn't bad to you before, was I? Isabella sneered. If you really cared about me, how could you betray me? Can you really have children with someone else? Seeing the little girl walking with Noah in the distance, Isabella's expression grew even colder. Your daughter is the same age as my son. When I gave birth to Noah, the woman on your side also gave birth to a daughter, didn't she? What are you pretending in front of me now? Christopher had no words to respond, his face as dark as the bottom of a pot. Isabella didn't bother to look at him anymore. She turned to Noah with a smile and said, Noah, Mom is here to pick you up. Noah was overjoyed and ran over to hug Isabella. Let's go. The three of us will go out for a nice meal today. Isabella gently stroked Noah's hair and then turned to me. All right, I'll do as you say. I picked up Noah and left with Isabella. In the restaurant, Noah was eating fruit salad with a small fork, and I wiped his mouth. While cutting the steak, Isabella suddenly asked me, Gabriel, do you want a child? I looked at her in surprise, seeing how serious she was. Why are you asking this all of a sudden? Isabella propped her chin up and said, After all, Noah isn't your biological child. If you want to have a child of your own, you can tell me any time. I paused and didn't answer immediately. I'm not an only child. I have an older sister who is 3 years older than me. My sister got married early and gave birth to 3 children for our family. The eldest is already in high school, the second son is in 8th grade, and the youngest daughter is still in elementary school. When it comes to family lineage, my sister alone can fulfill this responsibility. My parents were only worried that I wouldn't find a wife and didn't particularly insist that I have a son. In my opinion, Isabella doesn't seem to enjoy taking care of children. After work, she mostly just chats with Noah, and I'm the one who takes care of the children most of the time. Before we got married, taking care of the children was mainly done by a nanny. After we got married, I fired the nanny. Actually, I don't have a strong desire to take care of children myself. Noah is very well behaved and obedient, and he's especially close to me. I've already started treating him like my own child. My parents already have 3 grandchildren, so Noah is like my own child to me. I haven't considered having another one. I replied to Isabella seriously, but there was one thing I didn't say. Giving birth is truly difficult for women, like going through a trial. I don't want her to suffer. Isabella smiled and kissed me. All right, then we won't have any more children. After returning home, I helped Noah take a bath. He was already so tired that his eyes were barely open. I carried him into the bedroom and told him a bedtime story. Before long, the story wasn't even finished, and Noah had already fallen asleep. I leaned down, kissed the little guy's forehead, left a night light on, and gently closed the door to the children's room. Gabriel wants some beer. Isabella opened the fridge and took out 2 cans of ice-cold beer. Sure, I'll have one with you. Isabella and I sat on the swing chair on the balcony, drinking beer and enjoying the night breeze. Her house was on a high floor with a great view. From the balcony, we could see the lake park in the distance. The moon was full tonight, hanging in the sky, and the lake shimmered with sparkling light. Isabella leaned her head against my shoulder and said, Gabriel, do you know what I did on my 30th birthday? I made a wish. At that time, I hadn't met you yet, and I was curious. What did you wish for? Isabella was a little tipsy and spoke slowly. I wanted to find a good man who could both accompany me in public and help out at home. I never expected that a week later, when I went on a blind date, I actually found him. I couldn't help but laugh. Does that mean I'm your birthday wish? Isabella smiled. Yes, the first time I saw you, I knew you were the one. Does that count as love at first sight? Of course it does. Isabella and I shared a gentle kiss under the night sky, our breath mingling with the scent of wine. I wondered if I had drunk too much, because a single kiss made my head spin. Isabella laughed playfully, wrapping her arms around my neck, her breath gently brushing against my face. Gabriel, will you stay by my side forever? Before I could answer, she continued, even if you don't want to, it's okay. I've already tied you to me with a ring. She said seriously, don't even think about divorcing me. My heart raced, and I cupped her face, kissing her again. Yes, I'll always be with you.